Tony, I'm usually wrong. Like Mal's right, I'm wrong. Like, all right, I'll concede that. But there's been a couple times.
There's been some hits.
There's been a couple I told you so.
3%.
And the Jorts is 100% one of them. All right, everybody, welcome back. This is part 2 of the Born Primitive brand origin story. If you haven't listened, part 1 should be above this in the feed and wherever you get your podcasts. But we're going to get right into part 2 right now.
Yeah, Bear, something I'd love, like your kind of, once again, just advice or general awareness on is now at the size we're at in talking about like Mal just hustling, you hustling, being in the military. If you could go back now, what are some things like that you think now, knowing the highest levels of like you said, potential VC investments and raising money, and then just from a financial aspect as a whole, that if you could go back in time and you were, let's say 3 years ago where things were pumping, or 4 years ago, but it hadn't reached what it is now, what would you kind of go back and make sure as a CEO and founder that like, hey, I'm going to get really squared away on this because I know now how important this is?
Well, if I could go back, one thing I would have done, and this is kind of counterintuitive to what I was talking about earlier, I was kind of talking shit on private equity, right? Is I think I would have gone to the table to do a minority investment from a private equity firm earlier, because there was, during COVID and all that, things were ripping. I mean, there was just, these companies were just cutting checks just like it was going out of style. So I think that was a kind of a window of opportunity we missed, because I think that could have given us a trajectory as a company that would have even made that even more crazy hyper growth. So looking back, but again, that wasn't the world I was living in. Now I'm savvy on it. I went through a private equity process. We ended up deciding not to do a deal, but it was a year long of me being in the trenches, talking with these guys and flying them out and meeting and going through. So we're versed in that now. Next time, if that happens, like we're ready to rock and we know exactly how the game goes. But I would say looking back, that would have been one thing I would have done differently. We were so old school and like almost proud of like, we don't need anyone else's money. Like we'll do this ourselves. We don't, all these other companies are raising all this money. Like screw that. Like we don't need that. We're just going to outwork them. And that was cool. And it worked. And, as a family, we still own 100% of the business. And like I said, no one's telling us what to do, Tony. You know what I mean? I want to make us a don't tread on my shoe. Don't tread on my shoe. Guess what? We're making it. I don't have to run. I don't have to get approval. You want to make a We the People shirt? We're going to freaking make it. Because if you got an issue with the freaking Constitution, you can get the hell out, right?
Yeah.
That's the freedom we have because we didn't make that deal. So there's benefits, but if we could have found the right partner that was cool with that, and I think that would have allowed us to unlock a whole nother sphere of growth that we haven't yet, but we're getting there. Yeah. I would say that would be my biggest thing looking back. I'm like, man, if I could have seen how things were going to play out, I wouldn't have been so damn proud, and I would have done that earlier.
But to flip it on its head too, if we did have an equity partner and, maybe they came in saying that they're on the same page, but they ended up not being, how many risks that we've taken that have gotten us to where we are would we maybe not have taken?
True.
Because there was someone in the other corner telling us not to do that. I mean, the Jorts are a good example of that. Even though I was in the other corner telling you not to do that. You usually don't listen to me, so it still worked out.
Tony, I'm usually wrong. Like Mal's right, I'm wrong. Like, all right, I'll concede that. But there's been a couple times. There's been some hits. There's been a couple I told you so.
3%.
And the Jorts is 100% one of them. I mean, obviously.
Yeah, take us back to that decision.
Well, it was first deployment, and one of the guys, I'll just use first names, Pat, was wearing these like frayed jorts to the gym regularly, and I was like, dude, those are sweet. And they're like, yeah, they're stretchy. They're like rodeo jeans or something. So I got him to give me those jorts, and we sent them to our supplier and said, hey, can you find a stretchy fabric? And we made a bunch of changes to it, and Mal was like, you're out of your goddamn mind. We're not making stretchy frayed jean shorts. And I'm like, I think old school is coming back. Like, dudes want to go into the gym with like a flannel and jorts and like you're rocking AC/DC. Like, that's us. You know what I mean? And maybe it's just me, but like in my mind, like every dude should want to do that, right? So we ended up ordering it. We got there. We negotiated the minimum order down because I was like, I'm not ordering 200 units. We got her to agree to do 100 units, which I thought in reality, I'm going to maybe sell 20 of these, and I'm going to have to give the other 80 away to my other idiot friends that are just like me that will think this is cool and no one else will think it's cool. And we ended up selling through them really quick. And then I think we bumped it to 500 and then 1,000.
I think we sold out of them in like a day.
Yeah.
I was there. I was here at that point.
Yeah.
So I remember this exact.
Tony was scaling shelves, pulling down extra boxes of jorts.
I have one of the OG pair, one of those first 80. Yeah. So I remember that.
And then, I think it's got to the point now, Tony. I mean, shit. It's definitely over 100,000 units of frayed denim jean shorts. Like, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, I was looking up sales of when we launched them to try to remember when we did that. And I think the first year, and I remember that we launched them later in the year, the first year we sold 3,000 units. And I think that was before we even really did much marketing. And that was year one of the jorts.
Yeah. So,
and that was right around, something else I remember from that year was that was back the gym stimulus, right? Or no, that was a year before.
No, it was two. Yeah, Jorts launched in 19.
And then it was the spring of that following year where the back the gym stimulus happened.
Yeah. I guess to kind of get us caught up. So we move into the warehouse, hire Jen, first employee. We're actually a real company now. It feels Mal's getting paid finally. This giant warehouse we think is massive. We went from 1 employee to I think like 3 or 4 by the end of the year. And then I think 9, and by the end of the next year. So we're really starting to become a real entity. And I think you remember from the squadron court days, is like the AC was broken half the time. We're right by the runway in Oceana, so the F-18s are flying overhead, rattling the damn ceiling. I didn't even have a desk. I would sit at the conference table. There was 5 or 6 desks in that one room. We had the warehouse gym in the back, so my buddies would come in and be slamming barbells throughout the day, so you couldn't even, right on the other side of the wall, guys doing grace and dropping the barbell every rep. That was the environment that was the early days with the employees of like the culture we were creating, right? But it was tough, and you try to take a call, and there's 6 other people in the room, and the F-18s would every 2 seconds are coming overhead, so you'd have to put it on pause and say wait. I mean, I'm glad we got to go through that. Landlord wouldn't fix the AC and say like it's 85 degrees in there and we're like dying. Now we have this beautiful office with air conditioning and it's all soundproof now, so we don't have to deal with the F-18s, and giant warehouse, 2 warehouses. We're building a new place down the road. So like, I guess it's cool that, we went through that together, and it was kind of a shitty setup, but it was good. It was raw. I mean, you remember we'd all go back and do orders. Every salary employee would be doing orders together at the end of the day.
My favorite part of the day.
Yeah. Shut your brain off and just for 2 hours, just, do orders.
Hey guys, we got a lot of orders. We need your help. Oh, shucks. USP. All right. Let me come on out.
I think to fast forward a little bit, we get into spring of 2020. March 2020 rolls around. I think it was 2020. It's a little bit blur. And all of a sudden this news of this coronavirus starts creeping in, and we're like, what is this thing? Of course, as we all were. And then I remember when they did the first lockdown, which I think you remember the bend the curve, 2 weeks to bend the curve. And then we'd be good by Easter. Remember that? Yeah. Which obviously at the time, no one knew what the hell was going on. What happened was the website kind of came to a standstill. I mean, literally, I remember thinking going on Shopify, and there was like 3 users on the site, and it was almost like
our sales went down like 75%.
Even more than that. Yeah. It was like apocalyptic. There's no one on the site, no one on the roads. Remember? Yeah. You remember we like sent everyone home, and I remember I still went in. There was no one on the roads. Yeah. Literally no one. I was like, the world was ending. It was like an apocalypse movie, and I remember I called the Bear Complex guys and I called a couple other like founders and was like, hey, what are you seeing? And thank God they're all in the same boat of like, we are getting no sales right now. I was like, all right, it's not just us. And we had just submitted a few $1 million worth of purchase orders, to our suppliers. That of course takes 4 or 5 months to get in. And like, then you're going to owe them $2 million. And I'm doing the math on it. Like, hold on, like if this becomes permanent, we're toast. Because like I'm gonna have to pay that bill eventually, right? And I'm doing the timeline, like we're screwed. And that went on from what I remember for about 2 weeks, maybe a little less. And then all of a sudden the opposite occurred. Now you have people in quarantine, not spending any money at the bars, not going to concerts, not going to amusement parks. Oh, now the government's giving them free money. They don't have to work, or some of them are doing both, right? And all of a sudden, you have all this extra discretionary income that people are sitting in their homes in their sweatpants, and they need some sort of happiness and lift in their day. So people just start internet shopping like it's going out of style. Particularly, we were making athleisure apparel by then, so like our joggers and our comfy sweatshirts and stuff. Like it was perfect for that. and things exploded. It went insane. I mean, it flipped on its head, and this crazy exponential growth started occurring. And then in that, Dave from Drink02 called me and was like, hey, like, I know we're all killing it, but the gyms are getting crushed right now because they can't open their businesses. And that's kind of the core of our, especially the CrossFit gym owners. Like, we wouldn't exist if it weren't for them, because they're the kind of the gatekeepers of the community. And him and I kind of put our heads together, and I got to give him credit. He was more the brainchild of this originally, and I think we were able to throw some gasoline on the fire of the concept. But Dave was the one to kind of get the idea going. Was like, hey, what if we do a profit sharing initiative with all these gyms, and we allow them to opt in, and we'll share our profits, with them to help them stay open during this closure. So we launched that. We called it the Back the Gym Stimulus. We threw it together pretty quick. I mean, it was, in hindsight, probably the most successful campaign we've ever done. Probably one of those things that maybe it happens once every 10 years if you're lucky as a company. But you remember we were able to generate auto-generated promo codes for each gym. You could nominate your own gym. It would kick them back an email to them and the owner. It gave them creative products they could put on Instagram to promote their promo code. And then at the end of that, we gave 50% of all orders through those codes to these gyms. And it went viral. Every day, more and more gyms are signing up, and they're, hey, is this a hoax? No, this is real. Just go to the landing page. It's all there. Sign up, and you're in. And then just tell your members, shop Born Primitive, and we're kicking it all back to you. 50% of it after, cost of goods and all that. And it went crazy. We did it for 10 days, called it the Back to Gym Stimulus. And by the end of that, we were able to donate almost $200,000 just from that initiative. And I think that's, in my mind, looking back, that's when I realized that, hey, this is a real business. And I think we acquired a ton of loyal customers that still remember that. And then we did it again in the fall, because unfortunately we weren't out of COVID, as we know, and we're able to do another pretty significant donation for when we ran it back in the fall. But I just remember going through that period of uncertainty of like, are we going to be in business in 3 months? Did we just do 5.5 years, 6 years, whatever it was? And because of this outlier world pandemic, are we toast? And how the hell am I going to pay this $2.5 million purchase order when it's due? You know what I mean? Because obviously your sales are funding what's going to pay for that, right? So like, it's not like we were being fiscally irresponsible, but we were, assuming kind of business as normal. So then the opposite occurred. Now we're trying to chase our tail on this crazy exponential growth that everyone was experiencing. And it's a 4 or 5 month, 6 month lead time supply chain issue. So now you're trying to project out on demand these outrageous numbers, because you don't know how to forecast at this point. You know what I mean? Particularly now that there's a couple months added to lead time. And that led to the opposite problem, where we way over ordered, because how do you project? You know what I mean? And I was deployed, and Mal's of course doing a million things, and we had a new person in the role that like we thought was using the software properly, but wasn't. So these numbers we were sending out were just totally outrageous. I mean, for perspective, I think like for one color of joggers, we ordered like 20,000 units, like black joggers, like 20,000. Oh, sounds good.
I remember being in the warehouse and being like, I don't know shit about supply chain, but this can't be right. We'd get 148 boxes of warm up men's joggers in tactical green. We'd be like, what is going on? What is going on?
So that ended up being like a part overcorrection, but also part just like, we just didn't have the right person in the role. It was not malicious. They didn't do it intentionally. They weren't experienced enough to be managing now a company that was doing like, low to mid 8 figures annually in sales. And it's this new person that's like never done anything.
It was literally
like,
my friend.
Yeah. You're like, oh yeah, you got it. Like, here's the software, just like figure it out. And here's the purchase order. And Mal would be like, yep, sounds good. And like, we're wiring millions of dollars overseas for these, like millions and millions and millions. And finally, I think it came to a head, because I kind of like, I think I got back from deployment. I was like, Mal, like, hold on, like, there's no way we owe another $1.5 million to the supplier. Like, we just paid them that. Like, what are we ordering? And then we kind of dug into it. And I'm like, oh my God, like we just ordered 260,000 units for the fall collection. Like, what did we sell last time? 48,000 units. You know what I mean? And you quickly do the math. So that was a big, honestly, kind of punch in the nose for us, that we really had to like get through that. And just a good, I guess sometimes the best lessons learned of the hard way. And that absolutely was one of them that we've, since corrected. But that COVID period was crazy interesting. And, then of course the layer of like now dealing with employees, and like, how do we, like, one person got sick, like, what do we do? Because fulfillment, like, the people working in the office can go home and work from home, but like fulfillment doesn't happen if you're not in there. And I was like on the school of thought of like, all right, this is the frickin' flu. I understand people are dying, but like everyone here is 28 years old, fit, works out all the time. Like, let's roll the freaking dice. I can't shut down the operation because one guy has a freaking cough. You know what I mean? Because in hindsight, had we done that, like, we would have been toast. We pushed through a lot of dudes, you know, people getting sick. I mean, you got sick. I mean, we all got it. It was like, let's just ride this out. Let's all get it. And then let's move on with our lives. And like in hindsight, there was probably some HR things there. And you know, so we were constantly having to like get on the phone and be like, all right, so-and-so had symptoms. Like, do we shut it? And it's like, you know, so, oh man, that was a total pain in the ass. But I was on the side of like, hey, we need to assume some risk here, because if we don't, like, we don't fulfill orders, we're not a company anymore. So people either need to like assume some risk and man up and like just be freaking healthy. And if, of course, if you have autoimmune issues or you live with your 80-year-old grandparents, whatever, different. But if you're 28 and you're working out 5 days a week, like, you're going to get a few symptoms and we're going to have to move on. It's like, guys, we either do that or like none of us exist. So make it like it's on us. You know what I mean? And thank God we were aligned on that. Like, we're gonna roll the dice, and we're not gonna let this rule our lives, and we got to keep business as usual to some degree. But man, was that a pain in the ass to deal with.
Yeah, it was an interesting time, even from the the warehouse. And you guys gave an option, obviously, like you said, anyone that is not comfortable, of course, like, and then we were taking precautionary measures to like mitigate the amount of risk. But in hindsight, it's like, that time period was even weird for me because, like you said, we had the gym there. We had, which is a private gym, we were able to still work out, whereas a lot of people had no access to a full-blown gym. And then, yeah, work for me at the time kind of went on business as usual. So it is, what a unique time to think back on. Even like you said, just the consumer response to COVID was very strange. And I mean, it was a benefit to us, even amidst an insanely, what you would call kind of a negative time period. For us was actually strangely positive, just because of consumer behavior during that time. Yeah.
But you know, obviously the growth that we experienced, that was pretty wild. You know, that was definitely a pivotal moment for us. And you know, that's right around the time we first started doing like digital advertising, which we'd never done that ever. And we found Common Thread Collective, a agency out in California that's awesome, that we started working with. And that's a whole nother layer to this of like, you know what I mean? Like the whole realm of digital advertising and Facebook and Instagram, and how, you know, for a while there, and this is a little bit nerdy getting in the tactics of digital advertising, but before the iOS 14 update, like really anyone could run ads successfully on Facebook and Instagram, because it was such a lucrative platform to reach people to a very specific audience. So you had all these like companies that were getting started that were almost achieving immediate success if you were savvy in that world, because, you know, you could start $1 million t-shirt company like overnight if you had like cool shirts and a good advertising plan. And then after iOS 14, that changed significantly, because to oversimplify, you couldn't reach the same audience and it was way more expensive to do that. But that was another, you know, it's probably a bit too like tactical from an e-commerce standpoint for anyone that's, you know, probably not gonna be interested in that. But that whole digital advertising world as a whole, I would say, is a major contributor to where we were able to achieve, like, you know, the growth we did, because we're pumping millions of dollars at this point into Facebook ads. You know, some of you might see on your feed. We're probably dinging you every day. But that's, you know, that's been a big part of the strategy and a big reason we've been able to climb. But you know, I think this kind of gets into what I think is where maybe the marriage friction comes to a head. It's a bit of a blur, but would you agree? Is that kind of like, we're in both warehouses, I'm on training trips all the time / deployments. The only time we communicate when I'm gone is like, you know, Mal's not calling to say hello. It's like, hey, real quick, I got, you know how she is, like, I got 4 things I need answers on, you know, and it's like midnight and I've been training all day. And, you know, the other guys are calling their spouses like, hey, just want to check in. How's everything going? And we're just all business. Same thing on deployment. You know, I think it gets back to the point of just the collateral damage of like, know what you're signing up for if you're going to do this journey. Obviously, it doesn't mean everyone's going to become divorced, but you know, that was something that we had to go through. You know, turned out, you know, about as cordial as it could be for a divorce. Like, thank God you were cool about it. I was cool about it. I think we literally put a line down the center of a legal pad and just divided everything up and went to a lawyer and was like, hey, can you just write this up? And I think for what I remember, the lady like looked at you, was like, don't you want to like try to get more? You know, and you were like, no, we're good. You know what I mean? And
you got the dog, I got the cat.
Yeah.
And from an operation, did you feel like, did that friction as far as running the business, obviously you guys had decided on a personal level it was time to part ways, but did you feel that affect kind of the business and the decision making there? Or had you moved so far into that type of arrangement that actually still kind of stayed as is?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think, like you said, it made it way easier. Right.
Yeah. I mean, in the beginning, obviously, there were some arguments that probably shouldn't have been had. But I think we've learned from that and moved on.
Yeah. We still have the flare-ups. Fortunately, I think you're the only one that gets to see that these days.
Yeah. And the mediator.
Yeah.
I'm used to it. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, to me, I think it just kind of moved forward. I think we both just got to a place where it became the best decision for both of us. And, you know, you don't want your whole life to just be your work. You need to have some outlet. You need to have some fun. You need to be able to go home at the end of the day and walk into a home and be able to relax a little bit. And part of that too is, you know, work ethic and how you're wired. So you have to almost train yourself to turn that off at times, which I'm getting a little bit better at. But I still enjoy my 8 p.m. work sessions when my daughter's down and my husband's at the fire station. So, but yeah, I think it was better for all parties involved. It got to a point. But yeah, I mean, now I think we work together really well for the most part. And like Bear said in the beginning, he's got a certain personality for work. I have a certain personality, and he's the risk taker. I'm the one that sometimes has to talk him out of those risks, but sometimes says, all right, let's do it. And then just make sure everything gets done. And everyone that needs to know knows within the company. So I think it works out pretty nicely.
And Bear, the risk thing there, is that something I kind of had asked you as the business has evolved and you've evolved, kind of what has changed, or what would you go back and change? Your ability to take risk is something I noticed since, I mean, right when I started working with you. Is that something, I mean, at 10 years into this, 11 years, has that changed at all for you? Because I mean, a lot of people talk about that, like, hey, be super risky in the beginning and then kind of curb that back as you get things going, because then the operation kind of has some momentum. You don't need those big wins. You need an operation that is like efficient. How have you, as somebody who I think naturally like kind of is more willing to take risk, how has that evolved in you and kind of your decision making when Born Primitive started versus now?
I think I take more risk now.
Really?
I mean, just for context, I think maybe you're aware of this, but right before Born Primitive, I had a failed business, 110K down the tubes, and something we were really bullish on and thought it was going to hit. You know, it's 3.5 years of my life, you know, signed warehouse leases and equipment and all this. I won't get into the details of, but we had a really cool opportunity we were pursuing, and it just went up in smoke. And like literally months later, it was like, snatch shorts, let's do it. Right. You know, so I was not deterred. I've always kind of, I've always just figured, like, if we're going to do this, like, let's play a lot of hands and see, you know, let's throw our hat in the ring here and see what we can do. You know, if you look at current Born Primitive, it's like middle of a kind of economic downturn. Discretionary spend is way down. This is the hardest time it's ever been to run this company. We get 70 plus employees. And what have we done? We launched Born Primitive Outdoor. We're launching Born Primitive Tactical, and we're launching performance footwear, the Savage One training shoe. So I don't know, Tony, does it appear I'm any less risky than I used to be?
No, I would say no.
Right?
Yeah.
No, we're, you know, it's, again, I think obviously you want it to be a bit calculated. It's not like we're being cowboys over here and just doing whatever we want. There is an end state and I think a vision. And I think the best entrepreneurs are the ones to kind of always be 2 or 3 steps ahead. And I think that's my job, and something I really try to do is, like, I want to be looking out 2-3 years. I want to zoom way out and making sure we're steering the ship in the right direction, but also making sure we see upcoming opportunities that we can, you know, take advantage of. So, yeah, I think my appetite for risk is still really high. I always think of kind of like worst case scenario, like what were to happen. And I'm always okay with whatever that is, because I can live a simple life and, you know, I don't need lavish things. So why not? Let's be aggressive. And if we're going to fail, let's fail by being too aggressive, not by being timid. I don't want to, you know, look back in 20 years and say, man, we should have really played that hand because it could have been this. I'd rather say, you know what, maybe we went in a little hot and took a little too much risk and we got dinged, but hey, at least we went for it, and it's all good. You know?
Where did that risk appetite come from?
I think it's just, you're born with it. You know what I mean? It may be rooted back to sports a little bit, but you know, even my career path in the military, right? You know, it was like, I had a really cool job with Red Bull, corporate position. You know what I mean? Like, I had an Ivy League degree, so I could probably go work on Wall Street and do some cush, like, you know, something that paid really well there. And to me, I was like, no, let's go join the military and do a startup. Like, it was just, I always wanted to kind of take an unconventional path. I think there's obviously there's pitfalls and risks there, but we were able to navigate that, at least thus far, knock on wood, and absolutely was the right decision.
So you said outdoors launch, tacticals coming. Are those in the shoe? Obviously, the Savage One. Are those kind of the big projects coming here in the future? Are there any other things kind of that you guys are spitballing right now that are worth mentioning?
I think that'll keep us busy, at least for the next couple of years. Obviously the shoe stuff is something I've been wanting to do forever. But considering, I was active duty up until just like a year and a half ago, like there just wasn't time to like take that on. We were so busy with everything else that was like, man, we can't do shoes. And also we didn't have the subject matter experts, to create it. And then we got linked up with our shoe guys that are awesome and have done engineered shoes for all kinds of other legit companies. So once I had that level of confidence that we now have the capability, hey, let's take a swing at this. And now also, of course, the bandwidth, and it's also not cheap, purchase order for shoes in is very, very expensive. So there was some financial risk, and we're in a good position as a company. So I thought, now is the time to do it. And there's I think that increases our trajectory so much, because if you get the shoe right, which, here it
there
is.
It is.
I think we did get it right. And obviously the employees and myself, we've been wearing them for quite a while now, and thank God, because like they feel so good, and I'm so stoked how they turned out. I mean, be honest, obviously I was a little nervous, like in the development process of like, all right, we're gonna wire like hundreds of thousands of dollars, overseas to get these shoes, and like, what if there's something wrong? So we're past that, thank God. But that creates so much opportunity for us beyond this, and there's so much like value assigned to shoes, like. We could give a girl like a sports bra and a legging, and it's the same like maybe retail value. You give someone a pair of shoes, like they feel like you just gave them like, I don't know what, something psychological about it. We're really stoked on that. And then of course outdoor, particularly the hunting community, there's such a huge market, and I thought that just aligned perfectly with the Born Primitive mentality, particularly like the kind of the hunting out west. It's so active, like you gotta be in shape. You gotta put in the work to get to. The end state, and that aligns with our lifestyles too. So I thought that that's perfect. That the industry in that world, as is absolutely massive. So it unlocks all kinds of new potential customers for us, but also overlap. It's the really fit CrossFit dude who has been following us for a long time and is an elk hunter, but bow hunter or whatever. And now we have an outdoor line. He can now purchase that for that activity.
I mean, but there's also gear too for the everyday person.
True. Yeah, 100%.
People that enjoy hiking.
No, exactly.
People that, yeah.
I remember 2 years ago, it was almost like a little like nod from the universe. We were out in San Diego together at that e-commerce conference, and Chip Wilson, founder of Lululemon, who obviously is no longer involved with them, was doing just a 30-minute speech, which they had kind of worked in throughout the day. And the interviewer asked them like, hey, where do you see, you've always been a pioneer of kind of the athleisure, kind of like the performance space. Where do you see the next big opportunity as far as the clothing market? And he said, he's like, I think technical outdoor gear is the next big thing. And I remember Bear and I looked at each other, we're like, thank God. Because similar to the shoes, it's like, hey, this is a new vertical we're launching. And with that, there's obviously inherent risks.
Yeah, I think like, there's a lot of confidence from our end. Like when I look at the big brands in the outdoor space, particularly the women's side, I'm like, man, we can do this better. They have the big name, and it's like this, this mystique of like, oh, they're like they do $100 million sales, blah, blah, blah. But then when you really look at it, and I look at the capabilities we have under this roof, like with Frankie and like with Mal and Jill and like, everyone that would be involved in like the product development process, particularly as it comes to like female fit, no one compete with that. And the pants we just released, like the women's trail pant, women's frontier pant, I will stack that up against any of the big dogs in our space, in the outdoor space, and have a bunch of girls try them on, blind test them. Guarantee they're going to say the Born Primitive ones, because that's what we're good at. Not to say obviously the men's stuff isn't legit too, and that's like, I think the fit and function is like where we excel. But so I just saw opportunity. I was like, I know these brands are doing well, they have a foothold, but I was like, you take the digital marketing capabilities we have in-house, combined with product development capabilities, and just being able to roll up our sleeves and get it done. I was like, I think we can shake up this market, and we're going to disrupt it. Particularly because a lot of these brands, like we got back to the private equity angle, even these hunting brands are, they're acting super woke and this and that. It's like you're marketing to a bow hunter. Like, what do you think that guy wants to see in the marketing materials? We don't have to do that. We can be pure. Hey, we are good with, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
The hunting world and like what comes with that. And obviously there's some people that are not. That's okay. But we don't have to be, we have to shy away from that. We don't have to get into, woke politics and all that. Like we can be more primitive. And I think that's an opportunity.
Yeah. I mean, the name itself, as soon as we were in the outdoor space, everyone's like, dude, there could not be a better kind of like pivot for you guys, or not pivot, because we're still doing obviously the normal stuff as well, but tactical outdoor, born primitive, like there's not a name that would resonate better as far as in those industries.
Yeah. I mean, and just to touch on, we're heading into new verticals with the tactical, with the shoe, with the outdoor, but we're still doing it the born primitive way. And that way is high quality apparel, fits the athletic body type and any body type, and is going to withstand. And, just from the beginning, I think that's what I attribute a lot of our success to, is that insane product detail, testing everything. We have many body types here. We have people that work out, people that don't, people that do yoga, CrossFit, run. We test the products through all those different, ranges of activity. And if they withstand, we know it's time to bring it to the market. And we're addressing outdoor the same exact way. We're addressing the shoe the same exact way. Like it has to perform. It has to perform under stress, under a lot of activity, and it needs to last. And then also obviously standing behind your product. If there's a product defect, we take care of it. And that's something too, yes, we're launching into outdoor, tactical, the shoes, they're new space for us. But in my mind, they're going to succeed because we're treating them the exact same way as we do our sports bras, our leggings, our men's shorts. We're testing them, we're putting them through the ringer, and they're coming out on the other side intact and on top and allowing you to perform without having to worry about your clothes. So that's one thing where it's like they're new for us as far as product type, but we're doing it the same old way.
Yeah, the playbook's there.
Yeah, I mean, look at shoes alone. It was like 2 years, right? Like it was so methodical and tedious because we were like, all right, we all agreed, like we got one shot at this. Yeah. If the first Savage 1 sucks, we're done. You know what I mean? Because there's not gonna be a Savage 2 then. Thank God we took that approach because again, the people haven't gotten them yet. But obviously at the CrossFit Games, the response was crazy, which is so cool to see. And then we've all been wearing them at the gym locally, and like I've been putting mine through the ringer, and they absolutely have withstood. And that is after removing all bias too. Like I was like, all right, I got to give this a real look. I've been wearing the Nanos and the Metcons and, really those two mainly. And I'm like, this absolutely stacks up and is superior. So we're pumped.
Yeah. I mean, and to pivot too, you mentioned, things that are coming up, things that we're working on, big projects. Obviously those 3 that Bear just touched on are huge. But for me, we have developed so many products throughout the past 10 years. We have created very high quality. We've honed in on what works. So continuing to lean into those, continuing to bring new iterations of those to the market. And then in the meantime, doing what I just touched on again, continuing to make the products better. So now I think we have pretty much everything you could want from an athletic standpoint, athletic apparel standpoint. So now it's time to go back to the drawing board and take that original short and how can we make it better? How can we make it more what the customer wants to wear, more functional, lighter weight, quicker drying, antimicrobial. So I think for now, we've gotten to that point where the products that we have on our website are high quality and we're confident in them. So now how can we make them even better? That's something that I am focusing on right now as the business continues to grow.
Yeah, and that was kind of a strategy shift I saw and was obviously somewhat a part of is once that success started to happen, and it had been happening for a time period before, but it was almost more is more when it came to products. And then we looked at, and I'd say maybe 2020, we started discussing it, 2021, where it was like, wait a second, like, holy shit, look how many SKUs we have. So yeah, kind of like what is actually driving success and not thinking that more is always more. Of course, newness is a huge part of our success, but yeah, I remember like some of those discussions where it's like, oh my God, look how many products we have
I think
now.
Bear had to reel me in a little bit on the women's side, but I think our goal for 2020 was like double our growth and cut our product SKU in half.
Yeah, I'm still reeling them in. And, like this is partially kidding, partially not. Like Tony, this is kind of one of the problems you get when you have like 80% female workforce. Like, oh, this new bra, this new legging, and and they've killed it. But yes, there's a point where it's like, all right, guys, our summer collection has 128 new products. Like, what the hell? Like 70 would have been wild. And
it was one of our best performing product launches.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah. I mean, so we always had the foot on the gas, and that obviously brings customers back and they want to, reorder. And so it definitely helps, but there needs to be a little bit of caution. And I think we definitely cross that line and are maybe back on the other side, but we still tow it quite a bit. Particularly as we're trying to launch, outdoor and tactical. Like now it's like, all right, your SKU count goes way up, and then shoes, of course, every half size, getting shipping containers set. Like, so it's definitely, something we have to be, considerate of at all times.
For sure. So we've seen the story. I think the something I want to like pick or close out with both of you is you guys have reached a level as entrepreneurs and as kind of obviously founders and owners that very few people will ever reach. But I would love if one or two things like, and Bear, you kind of answered a couple of these, but what would you go back? What advice would you give somebody who maybe already has a small business that they're operating, or somebody that has an idea that they want to look to eventually bring to life? What one or two nuggets do you think, even looking back at yourself 8 years ago or 10 years ago, would you give to them as advice?
People ask me this a lot, and it's a hard question to answer because for me, it was just so natural. It's just how I was wired. I was wired to always finish the job I started. I was wired to not give up. It was, kind of ingrained into me. Bear, I don't know. Do you have anything to start with? Maybe it'll spark my memory.
So when you go first.
Oh gosh.
Why don't I give a couple, and then I'll Mal.
Yeah,
then you
I'll
can,
probably do it.
I think I alluded to this earlier, but number one is just know what you're signing up for. Like, I spoke at this like military transition program, and they asked me to come speak to guys that like were aspiring entrepreneurs, and they were hitting me with questions, and I think they maybe were a bit surprised on like how sobering maybe some of my answers were, because it wasn't like I wasn't telling them to go do this, but it's like, hey man, if you're 41 years old and you're collecting military retirement and you're a husband with 3 kids, like, while I don't want to discourage you from doing this, like going and starting this like random business that you have no experience in, like maybe isn't the best career move. Like maybe go get, like, you have 20 years in the Navy, you're good. Like you get a really good, comfortable job. You know what I mean? So I made sure in that, that presentation, I was very honest about the risks and the collateral damage that's going to come with it. You know what I mean? We talked about family collateral damage, the sacrifices you're going to make to your personal life. You know what I mean? You could be out going to the bars with your buddies, or going camping, or going on vacation and actually doing a vacation, and turning, you don't have your Slack channel on your phone blowing up the whole time, and emails and this and that. Like there's a lot you're going to have to do that is not going to be pleasant. So just really make sure that you are aware of that before you start the journey. And if you're still like, if you're staring at the ceiling every night thinking about it, and your soul is on fire, do it. Cause like that won't go away. But if you're like, this might be kind of cool, then don't. Go get a normal job, be a normal person. Don't be a founder. It's a lonely and dark road most of the time. So I would say number one, know what the hell you're signing up for. Number two, don't give away equity too easily. Right?
That's a full circle right there. Yeah.
Don't take 10 grand from your brother and agree on the equity percentage based on what your college football number was. And then, I've tried to arm wrestle him a couple times at Christmas to try to get equity points back, but he doesn't want to arm wrestle me anymore because now I'm bigger than him. He used to be bigger than me, but now the tides have turned. But no, I mean, it's definitely, while there's no value to it in the beginning, just really make sure you look ahead. Hey, in 5 years, what might this be? And weigh that with also the financial risk of like, if you do need to go get a loan, like let's say it's maybe more money. What if you need to, go take a loan for 100 grand and you do a home equity line of credit against your house? All right, now you're getting into like major risk territory. So maybe, hey, giving someone 40% of your company, maybe that is actually the right move, even though, in the long run, you're going to look back and say, I wish I hadn't done that. But for your family in that moment, maybe that's the only option. So I'm not saying don't do it, just be considerate of it. But those are two that right off the bat I get. But you come up with any, Mal?
I mean, I have a lot, but it's just how I word them, I guess. So I would say one thing is throughout this entire process, obviously we've covered a lot, but a lot of the decisions that Bear and I have made are like what our gut was telling us. So I know that's kind of like typical for people to say, but truly like stick to your instincts. And if you think something feels off, probably don't go down that road. Like what Bear said too, if you have like passion for something, but it seems a little risky, then, move forward. So kind of stick into your intuition, listening to what your gut's telling you. Especially if you are getting into something that you don't have a lot of background and education on. I mean, I was a dental hygienist with a science degree who got thrown into running a company that turned into, something that was valuated a lot more than I think we ever thought would be when we started in 2012. And then the other thing for me was taking time to celebrate the wins along the way, something that Bear and I probably haven't done at all. And especially if you're starting your own company and there's a grind and it's always problem after problem and lots of stress, like take a time to step back and admire what you've built, even if it's, a fraction of what you hoped for, you're still making progress along the way. So those are kind of some things that I probably need to stick to my own advice on the second one. But some things that I would tell someone that's starting off, a new company.
Yeah. And I think that first one, it's the problem set is always unique to your organization. And we all feel that with Born Primitive. Like no one has the exact answers, but I can speak to it from my personal journey here at Born Primitive. It's like, if you find yourself, like whether when I was running the international side of things or even now in my position, it's like, make sure like, don't convince yourself though that the problem set is completely unique to Born Primitive, because there are people who have traveled at least a similar road before, and leaning on them. And I you guys both know I'm very strong about like personal development and talking to those people about their experiences, because there's going to be insights there. And like something that feels super heavy for us as an organization, if you've bought and sold $100 million companies, to you, it's like, to those guys, it's like they've done it. And once again, it's not that it's exactly the same, but there is always nuggets of wisdom there that like help make the issues or the problems that you're trying to solve in Born Primitive a little more like human and a little less overwhelming. So yeah, that's something I've seen both of you do. And then I know personally is huge, is like, hey, reach out, find people that have been in a similar environment as you, or walked a similar path, and don't be afraid to ask questions. And you know this, like those people and yourselves even are always willing to share wisdom if they know the question is coming from the right place. Like those guys, that's what they love to do is be like, hey, I walked this fucking grinder. Like I'd love to share with you kind of my fuck ups along the way or what went really well. And that's definitely super useful, especially when you find the problem set kind of becoming bigger.
Yeah. I took down a couple more, but one of them was exactly what Mal said, was celebrate the victories. And we kind of talked about it on the last podcast. And Mal, honestly, like we still haven't done that once. Maybe the Dominican. Yeah, well, we did take a company trip to the Dominican Republic, and
we drank 900 Coronas.
Oh my God!
Tell the story how we had to get more food and Patron.
Well, we went down there. There's, I think at the time, 9 or 10 employees.
At the end of 20,
it was probably 12.
19. We had 11 employees.
Yeah, 11 employees.
And that doesn't include Mike and Matt, but they came.
It was a good year. We're like, hey, let's go have some fun. We're going to go down to Dominican Republic. We rented like a mansion on the beach, and it was awesome. And they had said, like the host had said, hey, make sure you bring cash, because like the only way to get food and stuff was with cash. We had the 2 chefs that were going to like prepare all meals and do all the food runs and everything. So we rolled down there. I think I rolled down with like $9,000 in cash, which I was like, I mean, we should be pretty solid. It was only like a 3-day trip, right? Like excluding travel. And we send the guy on the first beer and tequila run. And you know what I mean? I think we had drank in 2 days about 600 Coronas and
10 bottles of Patron.
10 bottles of Patron. You know, I gave the business plan for the following year in flip flops, drinking a beer at 10 o'clock in the morning on that little TV monitor in the living room. Yeah. And it was like, all right, work's done. You guys good? That's the plan. Like everyone, you know what I mean? But I remember we ran out of beer and food, and we ran out of money. So they didn't have cash, because I mean, literally, I never would have imagined in a day and a half we'd spend $9,000 on beer, but we did. And so I remember I had to get on the moped with the guy, and I shared my location with you, and I grabbed like a knife.
You're riding on the back.
I'm riding on the back.
With Don. Yeah. What was his name?
Don.
With Don, Dumb and Dumber style, into this pretty bad area in Dominican Republic. I remember I'm at the ATM, and of course it thinks like fraud detection. So it's like, you know, like because when I put my PIN in, it's Dominican Republic, like it thinks the card was stolen. So I'm on the phone with the bank. You can tell people are looking at me like, this guy's out of place. And I just remember thinking, man, this guy's setting me up. I'm about to get robbed. But you know, I ended up pulling out like, I think $3 or $4 I had to get off from bank, cleared it, and we got the Corona and tequila restock. But it's funny looking back, man. Like, of course, what we have now is great, and there's so much cool stuff in the future for Born Primitive, particularly talking about the building down the road we're building with the you know what I mean, the combined facility and the epic gym we're going to have for our employees to work out in and to test gear and all that. Like all that's really cool, but you look back and almost you crack a smile. Like we didn't realize like maybe that was the best it was ever going to be in a way, right? Because the problems you're dealing with aren't as big then. The financial implications aren't as big. You're in it. That was a that was a hell of a time.
Tony, this is going a little off topic, but it was an open air house. Remember, open air. So there was no doors and windows. And one night, all of the girls are upstairs in the bedroom. And do you remember when the bat flew in?
Oh my God, I killed the bat.
Yeah, you threw it against the wall. That was a fun trip.
Yeah.
Back when it was a little bit simpler, 11 employees versus 70.
I don't think there was an HR department then. I don't know what they would
Definitely
think of.
not.
That Ron Avalone was the HR department. When I put on my hat, that was the HR department.
We didn't have HR until 2021. 2021.
Probably a good thing. But celebrating the victories, right? And we talked about in the last one is like, I joked about like I think at Thanksgiving last year we hit the 100 million mark, and I think I shot you a text. You know what I mean? And like we didn't even like acknowledge it, and we were immediately back into like problem solve mode of like, all right, well, we got to get more ads in the account for tomorrow and this and that. And it was like almost like a text that gets overlooked, that like you ask a buddy a question and then there's a second question, he doesn't answer the first one. It was like, it's one of those things. That was not a big deal to me either. But thinking back, those are major milestones that like 1 in a million are going to achieve. And we just never do that. And honestly, same thing with the employees. Like those should be moments we celebrate with the employees too. That's not a moment for Mal and I, that's a company achievement. So definitely, I mean, shit, we're saying it right now, but we need to make sure. And shit, Tony, you're the VP, so you got to instill that too.
Yeah,
we all do. To make sure that you're at some point stepping back and smelling the roses a little bit, and not getting just caught up in just the constant grind and problem solving. And last thing I'll say on lessons learned, and then I think I'll be good on this one, is making sure that you're true to your values and you're proud of what you stand for. And part of the reason, like we talked about the values of Born Primitive, of being unapologetically patriotic and embracing personal responsibility and rejecting the victim mindset that's crept into society and all this bullshit. That's something we're really proud of. And that, for me, a lot of that was rooted in the fact that I was looking at all these other brands and very few of them I felt aligned with my values, right? Like pretty much every corporate brand, none of them stood for any of those things, right? And it's like there's no way I'm the only one that has those values, right? Midwestern kid, like, you know what I mean? Like that's got to be a pretty common theme, and I'm not seeing it projected anywhere in the corporate world. And why the hell is that? And now I know why a bit more. Won't get into it, but I see there's a lot of people pulling the strings behind the scenes that have ulterior other interests, that there's a reason you kind of eye roll when you see some of these things by these corporations. And I would just say one of the biggest things I'm proud of is we've from the beginning cut against the grain. And I think we're starting to be even more aggressive. When I looked at where we're at in our current society, I think it's gotten way worse. And I think finally people are willing to be like, all right, what the hell is going on here? Why is there not more of the alternative to all this bullshit we're seeing? And Born Primitive is going to be one of those companies that's going to give you the fucking alternative, because we're not afraid of that. And I think people are becoming slowly more vocal, even though the media has tried to silence what I would call the silent majority. It's out there. You talk to your neighbor, you talk to your buddies. No one actually wants a lot of this bullshit that's getting pushed. And that will be kind of shown through our apparel, right? We're going to have the Don't Tread on Me shoe coming out next year, right? Big old fucking snake on the ankle. You know what that stands for? That goes back to our American Revolution, naval heritage, and it's unapologetically patriotic. We got the Betsy Ross Savage one coming out later next year. That's a shoe that Nike banned because of the flag of the American Revolution. I mean, Tony, think about that. The flag of the American Revolution, the establishment of the Republic. Everything we have is from that moment. A bunch of patriots that were willing to take on the world superpower at the time, right? The 3% that fought, right? That symbol, according to Nike, is now insensitive and needs to be removed from all shoes, led by Colin Kaepernick and all the other snowflakes that were pushing that. Real billion-dollar entities were pushing these narratives, and they were getting away with it. Maybe not so much anymore, right? Look at Bud Light and Target, right? So I think there's a correction. But for me, looking back on this, if you're going to do this, stand for something. Don't waver. Don't let anyone else influence you. Be proud of that. You know, obviously those are our values, but it's okay. I mean, you can be about all kinds of other stuff. You know what I mean? It's fine, but stay true to it, and stand your ground. And then I think that will bring loyalty to what you're doing, because people that align with that want to roll with you. And when you wear that Born Primitive shirt and you have that logo, you want it to stand for something more. And that's I think how you achieve success. So for anyone listening, you know, coming directly from me and directly from Mal, I can make the promise that as long as we're in the seat, you won't see any of that bullshit. We're going to continue to be who we are. And I think right now, from just my opinion, society needs more of that right now. And you're going to see it from us. So strap in.
Love it. Mal, any closing thoughts on your end?
I mean, one thing, and it's not really, we do shout outs at the end of the day on Thursdays, just to recognize employees. But one of the things that I want to not forget about is we wouldn't be where we were today without our ambassadors, the people that from the beginning have had passion for our brand, have supported us, you know, without even meeting us at times. So just want to say a big thanks to everyone that's ever represented the brand. You guys have helped us get to where we were today. Bear and I can talk all day long about all the work we've put in, but if we didn't have fans, and we didn't have people that believed in what we believe in, which Bear just touched on, you know, we wouldn't be in existence. And then another one is our employees. I always say, take care of the people who take care of you. And we have now 70 people under this roof that take care of us every single day. They're coming in, working their asses off from 9 to 5, and a lot of times even longer. And all of that is because they have passion for what we create. They have passion for what we stand for. You know, at the end of the day, if we didn't have all those people under this roof, it would look a lot different in here. So I just want to say thank you to everyone that works for us, who have worked for us. You know, you've brought us to the top, and in my sense, compared to what we started with, we're at the top.
Hell yeah. Yeah. I mean, obviously fall summits we talked about last time. We're at a fall summit, and we'll keep climbing. Yeah. But you know, we're about to hit the 10-year mark, and you know, let's do another 10, see where we can go. Hell, who the hell knows, you know?
Love it. Well, thanks guys. Mal, you're a natural. We'll bring you back on. Guys, leave comments. Let us know what you want to hear. I mean, that's kind of a zoomed out brand story there, but like I said, I'd love to have Mal back on. So if you guys have questions, please comment below. Like, subscribe. We're on all the channels, and thanks for tuning in.
Yeah, and we're going to be doing Q&As for some of our episodes. So if you guys have specific questions, like literally there's nothing is out of bounds. You kind of just saw how, you know, personal Mal and I got on some of our family shit. So anything from this or any general topics you want us to kind of, you know, take a swing at, definitely comment below, because we think that'll actually create a lot of really good episodes for us. And then it's not scripted. Like, I don't even want to see the questions. I just, Tony, give them to me and let's roll with it. So we'd love to hear from you guys, and thank you so much for listening. And hopefully you got a little bit out of that. Obviously, we are far from perfect. We've made so many mistakes along the way, but it has been a wild journey so far. And we're stoked to have you all a part of it, and we'll see what the next 10 year brings.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
All right. Wrap.